The Blue Ridge. Is a lie of omission, a curved overlook, a wash of blue haze, one photograph everyone owns. What that postcard leaves out is that these are among the oldest and most geologically confused mountains on Earth. Packed with things the people paid to explain them, still can't close the file on. 19 of them, to be exact. And the last one is a mystery so old, it was already ancient when the dinosaurs showed up. So stay with me because it only gets stranger from here. Number 19, lights on Brown Mountain. Some things the locals have watched for 100 years, and science keeps showing up only to leave with its tail between its legs. The Brown Mountain lights are the oldest of those arguments. Stand at Wiseman's View in Pisgah National Forest on the right. Dark night. Look across the gorge toward that long ridge, and you may see them. Pale glows that rise off the mountain, drift sideways, hang there, and blink out. Before we go any further, let me say this once, and then leave it alone. I gathered the strangest of these stories, the ones there was never room for on camera, into a small ebook called the Appalachian Mystery Collection. It's there if you ever feel like wandering deeper, and that's the only time I'll bring it up. Now back to those lights. The U.S. Geological Survey took them seriously enough to investigate twice, once in 1913 and again in 1922, and each time they handed back a tidy answer: train headlights, car beams, swamp gas, starlight bending through the valley air. Neat explanations. The trouble is, they don't agree with each other, and some of them describe machines that didn't exist yet when people first reported the lights. Cherokee accounts of them go back long before a single locomotive ever crossed these mountains, which quietly guts the headlight theory. So you're left with a mystery that keeps getting solved and refuses to stay solved. People still drive out, park along the ridge road, and wait in the cold with their cameras. The mountain has never once explained itself. Number 18, the mountain filed wrong. Here's a peak that looks older than the ground it's standing on, which should be flatly impossible. Grandfather Mountain is the high point of the Blue Ridge Escarpment, and its rock tells a story that reads backward. Through a geological feature called a window, you can look straight at basement stone more than 1 billion years old, some of the most ancient exposed rock anywhere in the eastern United States. But the strange part isn't the age, it's the order. Ancient collisions shoved older sheets of rock up and completely over younger ones. So the layers sit out of sequence, the deep past resting bodily on top of the recent. Geologists can walk you through the thrust faulting without breaking a sweat. The mechanism is understood. Stand there and actually read the strata though, and it still looks like a filing error the planet never bothered to fix. The oldest page shoved to the top of the stack. That's the theme of this whole range, really. Nothing up here is stacked in the order you'd expect, and it's about to get harder to explain. Number 17, a page no one can read. Just off the park's southern edge, on Cherokee ground, sits a slab of stone covered in writing that no living person can read. Judaculla Rock, tucked into the Caney Fork Valley near Cullowhee, carries more than 1,500 separate carvings pecked into soft soapstone, spirals, stick figures, cupped hollows, lines that branch and then simply stop. Cherokee tradition ties the rock to Judaculla, a giant said to have leapt down from his hunting ground in the sky and left a 7-fingered handprint pressed into the stone. Kneel beside it and let your eyes travel the surface. Archaeologists believe different hands added to it across possibly thousands of years, generation layering over generation. And here's what stays with you after you leave. Nobody has produced a confident reading of any of it. Not the spirals, not the figures, not the branching lines. Every mark was a deliberate choice that meant something exact to someone, and the key went into the ground with the hands that made it. It sits behind a low fence now, weathering, half legible, even to the people who study it for a living, quietly keeping its own counsel. Number 16, the meadow that refuses trees. Climb high enough on Roan Mountain, and the forest just stops and opens into meadow where dense woods should own every inch. These are the grassy balds, sitting above 6,000 feet along the state line, straddling the Appalachian Trail, and they behave like they don't belong to the forest around them at all. Nobody cut these clearings for pasture or view. They're treeless stretches that predate written record in these mountains, and the cause is genuinely unsettled. Some researchers blame old climate patterns. Some point to grazing by animals long since vanished. Some to leftover conditions from a colder age that never let the trees close back in. Then comes the part that turns a curiosity into a real puzzle. Left completely alone, the balds fight off reforestation. Land managers now clear the encroaching growth by hand, because without help, the surrounding forest would slowly swallow ground. These meadows held on their own for centuries. Something keeps the tree line pinned down up here, and no one's fully sure what. Stand in that grass with woods on every side, and no woods where you're standing and you feel it. The mountain is refusing trees, and it isn't telling you why. Number 15, the canyon that lies to your compass. Now the mountains stop being strange to look at and start being dangerous to trust. Linville Gorge, they call it the Grand Canyon of the East, is one of the deepest gorges in the eastern United States, a federally protected wilderness with almost nothing built inside it. It's also threaded with magnetic mineral deposits dense enough to pull a compass needle clean off, true. Hikers have reported readings that shift as they move across the rock, the needle swinging toward the stone underfoot instead of holding north. That's not a fun little quirk out here. The gorge is brutally steep, cell service ranges from thin to non-existent, and people get genuinely lost in it every single year. Search and rescue teams factor the anomaly into how they plan operations, treating whole sections of the terrain as ground where basic navigation simply can't be trusted. Picture it. You're holding a working compass, doing everything right, and the instrument is quietly pointed at a lie. Down here, the map argues with itself, and the next one doesn't lie to your compass. It lies to the calendar. Number 14, the mountain that breathes cold. Some places breathe, and this one exhales winter in the middle of July. Bat Cave in Henderson County is the largest known granite fissure cave in North America. Not a hollowed-out limestone cavern, but a vast crack system running deep inside solid rock. The Nature Conservancy manages it, mostly to protect the endangered bats that shelter there, so access is tightly locked down. What draws the few cavers who get in is the airflow. Deep sections push out cold air even at the height of summer, a temperature inversion that keeps parts of the cave near frozen while the forest outside bakes. Exactly how the fissures channel, trap, and cool that air is still something the people crawling through it with instruments are working out. Stand at a lower opening in August, sweat on your neck, and feel genuine cold pour up out of the rock against your legs. The mountain has been breathing like that, slow and cold, since long before anyone was around to feel it. Number 13, the water that never quits. Here's a natural water slide fed by numbers that don't quite add up. Sliding Rock sits in Pisgah National Forest near Brevard, in a county that bills itself as the land of waterfalls, and for once, the marketing undersells it. The rock is a 60-foot slope of smooth, tilted granite, and roughly 11,000 gallons of water pour down its face every minute of the season. All summer, people launch off the bottom into a cold plunge pool. The odd part is how stubborn that flow is. It holds up through dry spells that shrink other creeks in the region to a trickle, as if whatever mix of high watershed and underground flow feeds it is somehow buffered against the droughts that hammer everything around it. The streams nearby go quiet and shallow. This one keeps thundering down the granite like nothing changed. Simple to picture, harder to explain, and impossible to turn off. The water never quits. Number 12, the peak that answers back. Some mountains are named for what people believed was living inside them. Devil's Courthouse rises off the parkway near milepost 422, a bare, dark dome of exposed rock that looks deliberately menacing from the road below. The Cherokee name ties it to Judaculla again, the same giant from the carved stone, said to hold court in a hidden chamber deep inside the mountain. Climb the short, steep trail to the top, and the acoustics start doing something you can't quite account for. Sound carries and cuts out against the rock faces in ways that feel wrong for open, exposed air. It's one of those places where an old story and a physical quirk feed each other until you honestly can't tell which came first, the legend or the echo. Say something at the summit, and the mountain seems to hold it a beat before letting it go. Whatever's happening up there, it feels a little too much like the rock is listening. Number 11, the summit going gray. The tallest peak east of the Mississippi is quietly losing its forest, and no one can fully agree on why. Mount Mitchell tops out at 6,684 feet, the highest point anywhere in the eastern United States, and its crown should be a dense, dark cloak of Fraser fir and red spruce. Instead, whole stands rise dead and gray against the sky. The theories compete, and none of them wins outright. Acid deposition drifting in from industry hundreds of miles away. An invasive insect called the balsam woolly adelgid chewing through the firs, climate stress at high elevation, or some tangled combination doing the work together. Each explanation covers part of the die-off. None covers all of it, which is exactly why the argument won't die. You climb to the observation platform expecting the green roof of the east, and you find bleached trunks standing up out of the living trees like bare bones in the fog. The summit is thinning, a little more each year, and the mountain isn't offering a straight answer. Number 10, the wrong animals. A road crew went looking for a straighter highway and hit a graveyard full of animals that have no business being here. Back in 2000, construction near Gray, Tennessee, cut into a buried sinkhole packed with fossils around 5 million years old. And what came out of the ground rewrote the whole local picture. Red pandas, short-faced bears, ancient rhinoceros, tapirs, a full warm climate menagerie preserved in astonishing detail because the sinkhole had sealed them away from air and decay. Read that again. Red pandas in the mountains of East Tennessee. The highway got rerouted, the pit became an active dig and museum, and researchers are still working out how a subtropical world thrived where these cold gray ridges now stand. The dig isn't close to finished. Every season pulls more of the wrong world up out of the dark. And if a warm, vanished ecosystem sitting under Tennessee feels like a lot, hold on, because the second half of this list is where the ground really opens up. Number 9, the town that won't stay under. Some towns don't stay buried. This one climbs back out of the water whenever the lake drops. Fontana Lake spreads along the southern edge of the Smokies, a reservoir born in the 1940s when the Tennessee Valley Authority dammed the Little Tennessee River for wartime power. Whole communities went under to make it. Homes, barns, farms, roads, and the graves of families who had worked that ground for generations. Some cemeteries were moved before the flooding came. Others were simply left where they lay. The most famous scar of the whole deal is the Road to Nowhere, a stretch of highway the government promised residents to replace a drowned route, then never finished. It runs into the mountains and dead ends at a dark tunnel opening onto nothing but forest. And when drought pulls the lake down, the past comes back up. Foundations, stone walls, old chimneys rising out of the mud along the shoreline, cracked and gray in the sun. Families still take boats out to the stranded cemeteries on decoration days, tending graves that spend most of the year surrounded by water. You can drown a town. Keeping it down is another thing entirely. Number 8. The army in the sky. Some places, the wind sounds like something it shouldn't, and people here have been reporting it for over 2 centuries. Hickory Nut Gorge, near Chimney Rock, is a steep, narrow cut where air funnels through, hard and loud, and the acoustics carry a long, strange history. In 1806, more than one resident reported seeing and hearing what they described as a spectral army marching through the sky above the gorge, with cavalry, movement, and the noise of a battle that wasn't there. It was documented at the time, taken seriously by people who had no reason to invent the same thing together. Skeptics point to the obvious: wind, echo, and a gorge built to carry and distort sound across its rock walls. And maybe that's all it ever was. But the accounts came from separate, credible witnesses describing the same vision at the same moment, which is a lot harder to wave off than one lonely tall tale. Stand down in that gorge on a gusting day with the wind roaring off the cliffs, and you understand exactly how the story got its start. The gorge talks. It always has. Number 7. The forest that grows a ceiling. Here's a woodland that grew itself a roof instead of a canopy. Craggy Gardens sits high on the parkway, northeast of Asheville, a heath bald where gnarled rhododendron have twisted and knotted together over a century or more, into low tunnels you walk through rather than under. Come in June, and the whole slope detonates in purple and pink, and the buses roll in for it. What gets far less attention is that Craggy is another of the range's unexplained balds, a high, open, shrub-choked zone where tall forest just won't take hold, argued over the same way Roan's grassy balds are. Wind exposure, thin soil, old climate, fire history, the theories stack up and never quite settle. Overhead, the rhododendron branches lace so densely that the trail runs through green shade even at high noon. You duck under limbs older than the road itself in a forest that decided a long time ago to grow sideways, and let the green close quietly over you. Number 6. The gorge that won't cooperate. Some places carry a reputation that instruments can't quite shake off. Wilson Creek, a federally designated wild and scenic river in Caldwell County, cuts through a rugged, remote gorge that pulls in whitewater paddlers and, over the years, a steady undercurrent of odd stories. People report gear acting strangely in there, electronics failing, readings going unreliable. Dense mineral geology in the surrounding rock offers a grounded reason, and it probably is the reason. But the pattern's persistent enough that it's woven itself into the character of the place. The terrain handles the rest. It's steep, isolated, and unforgiving, the kind of country where a wrong turn matters and help is a long way off. Search teams treat the gorge with real caution, not because of any legend, but because the ground itself is genuinely hard to work. Whatever the cause, it has a way of not cooperating. You bring your instruments in, the gorge keeps its own rules. Number 5. The ghost town in the sky. Some abandoned places watch you back, and this one does it from the top of a mountain. Ghost Town in the Sky is a derelict amusement park perched on a summit directly above Maggie Valley. Built in the 1960s as a Wild West theme park you reached by chairlift or an incline railway hauling straight up the slope. In its heyday, it drew crowds to a full frontier main street, staged gunfights, a saloon, rides bolted to the roof of a mountain. It's opened, closed, and reopened again and again across the decades, and for long stretches, it just sat up there rusting. Silent rides, a decaying western town set, empty saloon fronts staring down at the valley below. The sheer logistics of building and supplying a working amusement park on a peak that steep still feel faintly absurd from the ground. Locals grew up with it looming over their town, lit some years, dark others, depending on who owned the dream. That season, even shuttered, it holds the ridgeline. It still looks down on Maggie Valley, and Maggie Valley still looks up. Number 4, not yours to explain. Some things on this list aren't mysteries to be solved, and outsiders keep making that mistake. On the Qualla boundary, home of the eastern band of Cherokee Indians, the Yunwi Tsunsdi, often translated as the Little People, are part of a living tradition, not a spooky attraction dreamed up for a gift shop. They run through generations of Cherokee oral history, small beings tied to specific places, with their own rules about respect, help, and consequence. What matters here is how it's held. To the community, this isn't folklore filed next to campfire stories. It's a serious, continuous cultural understanding carried carefully from one generation to the next. Visitors want it flattened into a legend they can take home for the drive, and it simply isn't offered that way. The Eastern Band has kept its language, its stories, and its stewardship of this land through centuries of pressure to give all of it up. This whole range is full of things science loves to poke at. This one isn't ours to poke, and it's better for the honesty. Number 3, the forest that blinks together. Some nights in these mountains, thousands of insects flash in perfect unison, and no one can fully say how they pull it off. Elkmont sits inside the Great Smoky Mountains, a former logging town whose old cabins still stand along the river, quiet now. For about 2 weeks in early summer, it hosts one of the only populations in the hemisphere of Photinus carolinus, fireflies that synchronize their light, the whole forest floor going dark and bright together in slow rolling waves. Demand to witness it runs so high, the park now holds a lottery just to grant access. Researchers understand pieces of it, that it ties to mating, that the males coordinate their signals. But the exact mechanism driving that mass synchronization is still genuinely debated. Stand in the pitch dark among the old chimneys and watch a whole hillside pulse, on and off, like it's breathing. Thousands of separate insects. One rhythm, no conductor anyone has ever found. The whole forest blinks at once, and then it's gone for another year. Number 2, the mountains that make their own sky. The blue smoke. This whole range hides behind turns out to be a chemical process we only understood recently, and still can't fully close out. The Great Smokies, the most visited national park in the country, take their name from that persistent blue haze pooling over the ridges, and for a long time, people just called it smoke and left it there. The modern explanation is that the dense forest exhales volatile organic compounds, natural chemicals from all that vegetation, which react with the air and scatter light toward blue, brewing the haze that gave these mountains their name. But the exact recipe shifts constantly with temperature, humidity, sunlight, and the mix of plants below. And it's still something scientists actively model rather than fully finish. Think about what that actually means. The forest breathes out its own atmosphere. The mountains manufacture the very weather that made them famous. Stand at an overlook at dawn, watch that blue smoke fill the valleys like slow water, and remember, the range is making that in real time, and it hasn't handed over the full formula. Which brings us to the oldest question of all. Number 1, the oldest thing still moving. The single strangest thing about these mountains is that they're still here at all, and stranger still, they're still moving. The Blue Ridge is among the oldest mountain ranges on the entire planet, built from rock more than 1 billion years old, thrown up in ancient collisions to heights that likely rivaled the Himalayas. Then time went to work. Hundreds of millions of years of erosion ground those towering peaks down to the soft, worn, blue-hazed ridges you see now. By every rule we know, a range this old should be geologically dead, finished, settling, sinking back toward the flat. Instead, the evidence points the other way. The Blue Ridge appears to be slowly rising still, lifted by deep processes in the crust that aren't fully worked out, gaining elevation even as erosion keeps grinding it down. Picture that, an ancient, exhausted range that was already old when the first dinosaurs walked, quietly refusing to lie down, still pushing up toward the sky after 1 billion years. Everything else on this list is a detail. This is the whole mountain. The oldest thing in the story is the one thing that won't stop moving. The Blue Ridge. Most people flatten into one hazy overlook is, underneath, one of the least finished places in the country, full of lights we can't source, meadows that fight the forest, and a range so old it should be dead but won't stop rising. So tell me down in the comments about the one near you. The trail, the hollow, the stretch of woods where something happens nobody can quite explain, because those are the ones we go hunting next. Subscribe, and the next investigation is already waiting for you right there on screen.